All right, so my name is Ralph Mead, and I had to prepare some notes to keep myself on task here. If I didn't, I would probably wander a bit. But I am a professor in the Department of Earth and Ocean Sciences at UNCW, and I am humbled to have the opportunity to participate in the state of the river, as well as sit up here with my colleagues. My involvement in PFAS began with the revelation of Dr. Knappe and his colleagues that our area was highly impacted by PFAS. I have been researching the occurrence of PFAS in various environmental compartments, which includes air, water, and sediment as well. One of the things that I hope for is my work is to have a positive impact on understanding how we are exposed to PFAS and ultimately find solutions to lessen the impacts that these anthropogenically derived compounds have on ourselves, as well as on the environment that we live in. Should I go on to the second part of the prompt about the wand? Okay, perfect. All right. So the second part of that prompt was, if I had a magic wand, I would go back in time and make manufacturers as well as users of PFAS better stewards. This would entail more responsible disposal of PFAS waste, thoughtful inclusion of PFAS in consumer goods, alternatives to PFAS, and more health and environmental impact studies with transparent sharing of results with the public and regulators. The outcome of that would be then to lessen the human and environmental exposure to guarantee that we live in a safe place.
Okay, so Emily Sutton, Haw River Keeper at Haw River Assembly. I'm upstream on the Haw. For those of you who need a visual map, I'm also a map person. So that encompasses Rockingham County, Guilford County, Alamance, a little bit of Caswell, Durham, Wake, Orange, Chatham. So all of Jordan Lake and all of the river. It's a beautiful river if you haven't paddled it or hiked alongside of it. I'm a little biased, but it is the most beautiful river in North Carolina. So how I got into PFAS work. I started at Haw River Assembly in 2016. And our executive director, Elaine Chioso, had already been working with several scientists at EPA and Dr. Detlef Knappe at NC State to track why there were such high spikes of these legacy compounds, PFOS and PFOA, in the Haw River Basin. And what they found was that a lot of these spikes were actually coming from rural areas. So when they tracked that, they discovered that these higher levels were actually coming from biosolids, or the sludge that is land applied from wastewater treatment plants. So when I started in 2016, I kind of overnight had to become an expert on sludge and leachate. And Dana Still so affectionately calls me the leachate queen, which is a really flattering name. So I have been working with sludge and leachate and helping to figure out where the heck these chemicals are coming from. And what we found was that all of these were being sourced from the city of Burlington's wastewater treatment plant. So unlike Chemours, the city of Burlington is a municipal wastewater treatment plant. It is not one bad actor. It has dozens of industrial users that send their industrial waste through that wastewater treatment plant. So back in 2019, we filed a notice of intent to sue the city of Burlington. And at the time, levels that were being discharged directly into the Haw from the wastewater treatment plant effluent was over 30,000 parts per trillion. So we've thrown a lot of numbers and acronyms at you today. So the new drinking water standard for reference is 4 parts per trillion. So 30,000 coming into the Haw. And just a short distance downstream is a tiny little town of Pittsboro. Pittsboro has about 6,000 water users, so it's a real small town. Doesn't have the budget for a reverse osmosis treatment or a massive water treatment of any kind. And they're the only town in our watershed that pulls directly from the Haw. So levels in their drinking water at the time were over 1,200 parts per trillion. So since then, we have been working with our friends at Southern Environmental Law Center to track the sources within that system. We've identified the 3. It's Elevate Textiles, Shawmut Fabrics, and Unichem. So those 3 facilities have been identified, and we are working to stop them at the source. Okay, so magic wand scenario. I've kind of wrestled with this a lot, but I think if I had a magic wand, I would put the precautionary principle into place. For those of you who don't know, the precautionary principle is a practice that is used in other countries that is kind of common sense. It's that if you are a chemical manufacturer, you have to prove that the chemical that you are going to discharge into the air, soil, water is safe before you do that. It works the opposite way here. So here, chemical companies are innocent until proven guilty. And that process of proving them guilty can take decades. It takes health studies that some of you in this room have been a part of. It takes policy. It takes lawsuits. It takes so much work just to get the chemical companies to be accountable for the toxins that they've dumped into our environment. So that would be my magic wand.
I just want to say that was incredibly powerful documentary. So thank you to Ethereal Films and Diane Cotter for that. I've watched it a bunch of times, and every time I watch it, I get emotional. I too had to write stuff down because I'll get off track. But I'm going to ask you a question, and I want you to think about it while myself and the other panelists all share our views on PFAS and PFAS in our turnout gear. And my question to you is, who is protecting us, the firefighters, while we are protecting the community? And for those of you who do not know me, I'm Leigh Bransford. I'm a firefighter, but I'm much more than that. I'm a mother, I'm a daughter, I'm a friend, I'm a union rep for the local 4576, and I have a responsibility and a duty to be a voice for my family and my fellow brothers and sisters. And I'm here, just like you all, to fight the good fight. A little bit about me. I'm on the executive board of the IFF 4576 here locally. I've been a firefighter for 6 years, and I'm an extremely active employee at New Hanover County Fire. I'm on the performance wellness team as a peer fitness trainer, where we focus on health and wellness of firefighters, and a member of the North Carolina First Responder Peer Support Group, where we focus on mental wellness of first responders, as well as Task Force 11, and I'm on the Swiftwater Rescue Team. So in Florence, well, I wasn't here for Florence, but we're swimming in the water that's out there. So, So last year, the World Health Organization, IARC, reclassified firefighting occupation to a Group 1 classification, and that means firefighting is the deadliest occupation when it comes to cancer. And thanks to the IFF, the fire service at a national level is getting progressive and proactive with health initiatives, education, evidence-based research when it comes to firefighter health. Firefighters have so many things stacked against them, us, when it comes to their wellness. There's mental health and suicide, cardiac health, sleep deprivation, and cancer, just to name a few. And now with the discovery of ungodly amounts of PFAS in our turnout gear in all 3 layers, young firefighters are being diagnosed with cancer, and the surge of cancer line-of-duty deaths has risen. At the national level, the IAFF has become aggressive and is fighting a huge battle with NFPA, who writes some of our standards and writes the standards for our turnout gear. Manufacturing, textile companies, and more. Legislation, lawsuits, and presumptive cancer bills are being pursued by the IAFF across the United States and Canada at international levels. At a local level, we need our municipalities and our fire departments to step up and be the forefront, like help fund alternative gear, pay for early cancer screening yearly, and in-depth yearly physicals, as well as create policies and procedures within our local fire departments addressing PFAS in our gear. They need to invest in our health and wellness on a deeper level rather than just doing the bare minimum and checking a box. Think about this. Day in and day out, we're putting on our cancer-ridden gear. PFAS absorbs into our body and stays forever because we're constantly being re-exposed. It's terrifying to know that. Not only do we worry about cancer from PFAS, but there are plenty other health effects from that in our turnout gear. It affects behavioral development, metabolism, endocrine, immune, neurological, reproductive systems. And for females in the fire service, we have a higher miscarriage rate than the general population, and much more. We have been misinformed and lied to, and thinking our turnout gear was protecting us from the very thing it is giving us. We have a moral and ethical duty to do the right thing, and we cannot let politics and special interests get in the way of humanity. We are not just a number on the roster. We are mothers, fathers, we are wives, husbands, daughters, and sons. And again, I ask you, who is protecting us while we're protecting you? I forgot about the magic wand. If I could have a magic wand, I would probably change the NFPA standard for our turnout gear, as well as just do away with it in our turnout gear. There's no need for these textile manufacturing companies to, it's just overdone. We don't need it in our gear. We don't need that type of testing on our gear. So that's what I would do.
Thank you. All right. I'm not as cool as Leigh, so I'm going to keep it a little bit more brief. But my name is Benjamin Bobzien. I'm the president of the New Hanover County Professional Firefighters Association, which is Local 4576 under the International Association of Firefighters. And I also serve on the board for the Professional Firefighters of North Carolina. My role as a president and as a board member with the state, there's multiple roles when it comes to PFAS, but you know, the first role would be to advocate for safer work practices. You know, one thing that we try to do is work with our administration, and we limit our exposure rate, but we're also trying to change something. And there's something about firefighters I need everybody to understand is there's two things we hate, and that's change and the way it is. So, it is a battle. You know, we do things the same way. I've been in the fire service for 25 years, and so we do the same thing over and over every day. It's hard to change the habit. But we are working with our administration all the time, trying to increase the safety for our firefighters by changing those work practices. Again, it's an uphill battle, and but we're working on it. As far as the state level, my role is a little bit different. I work on legislation that directly impacts firefighters throughout North Carolina. We introduce legislation, we support legislation, and we also oppose legislation. Sometimes there are bills out there that seem to be helpful, but they're really not. And you know, there's one right now that we're not a big fan of. that basically turns us into human guinea pigs for testing for AFFF foam in North Carolina. I'm not a fan of being used like that, and I'm sure the other firefighters here agree with that. So that's essentially what we do. We work on legislation. We work on what we can do on a local level to change what we can. The simple fact is this, that we wear turnout gear to protect ourselves. Even though it's killing us, we still have to use it for the thermal protection. It's pretty important when you go into a fire not to burn. And right now there are no alternatives out there that are NFPA compliant. And like Leigh was talking about, trying to change that standard, do away with it so we can make sure that we do have safe alternatives to wear. The IAFF is working tremendously hard on that right now. They've actually filed a lawsuit against NFPA because they asked them nicely to change the standard, and they wouldn't do it. So that's what we're up against. We're up against big dollars. These businesses, these committees that are designed to help, we say, are tied in with big dollars. So that's what we are. We advocate, and I guess if I had a wand to change anything, it would be the culture of the fire service. Not all of it, because I love the culture of the fire service, but the culture when it comes to our turnout gear. Again, there's no need for me to wear thermal protection when I go to a medical call at 2 a.m., somebody that's having breathing problems. And that's a really tough battle, even for myself, because we're ingrained a certain way. But if I had the wand, I would make sure that we would change that culture altogether. Thank you.
Thank you so much to all the panelists. I do want to say that I was in communication with Diane before showing this, and she did want to thank all of you all for coming and thanked everybody for showing up here too. So she's a cool woman, obviously. Okay, we're going to open up the floor to questions. We have a PFAS researcher, a PFAS advocate, and these two wonderful firefighters here. So please raise your hand if you have a question. We have 2 mics that can wander.
Hi. I was wondering if you guys had any knowledge about PFAS issues of Nomex clothing commonly used by wildland firefighters?
So the IAFF actually just released a study. I've not read it yet, but email came out yesterday about certain Nomex gear and also station wear. Because that came out also that uniforms that some firefighters are wearing, and if you look at the wildland firefighters, it is not like turnout gear. It's like pants and a jacket. So it's very similar materials like station wear, but there are chemicals that are used in those, and I know research is being done on it. I don't know per se, with PFAS, but yeah, that report just came out. And in fact, if I can pull it up before we leave, I'll see if I can get it to you.
I was just wondering, are there any other countries that have protection that's different than ours?
Yes, I believe, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I know Europe, basically, they have outlawed PFAS, I think, in their turnout gear and pretty much in everything. And they're switching to PFAS-free turnout gear. But their also style of firefighting is a lot different from ours in America as well. And then in Canada, they are passing a lot of legislation. So Canada is also a little bit ahead of the United States. Do you want to add to that?
And I think what's interesting about turnout gear in North America or in the United States is that it does have to pass certain tests from the National Fire Protection Agency, NFPA. And one of those is a UV light degradation test. And it sounds important that you don't want your gear to break down, under UV light. But we're only talking about a 10-year period that we typically wear turnout gear until we get a new set, unless it breaks down before then. The other one is a hydraulic oil test. And these tests, in the eyes of the IAFF and our people, that they say it's not necessary. Honestly, Firefighters over there, raise your hand if you've ever been saturated in hydraulic oil in your turnout gear. Oh, you got one. All right, he's the exception. Thanks so much. But honestly, like, these tests aren't really that necessary. It's not necessary for us to have those tests done, and the IFF was asking the NFPA to change that because currently they have to use PFAS in the material for it to pass those tests. Otherwise, it would break down. So that's the fight we have right now.
Ralph and Emily, do you want to share anything about PFAS in general in America versus other countries?
Sure. So this is not specific to the turnout gear, but for the firefighting foam, AFFF, a lot of countries are no longer using that. There's a lot of alternatives that we know are safe. And this firefighting facility that you mentioned earlier, that there's a bill right now that it would include it in the state budget to buy a facility in Stanley County to test out firefighting foams. And right now that includes the AFFF PFAS containing foam. So we're very concerned about the human guinea pig aspect of that. But we've been pushing Harbor River Assembly, SCLC, and Cape Fear River Watch, and a lot of other advocates have been pushing to make that facility the training facility for seeing if these alternative foams are effective. The military is already phasing it out in a lot of their practices, and so there's no reason that we have to continue to use these super toxic foams. And do you want to add anything about PFAS generally?
No, I think.
Okay.
Okay, next question.
Hey, give me some clarity, okay? Because I'm actually on the city council, and this is actually the first time, I'm hearing about your uniforms aren't sufficient. And did I understand you to say that the national level for having the uniform is what you already have? Is that? I mean, what? I'm on the city council, so how can I help?
So
you?
NFPA sets standards for turnout gear. I believe it's NFPA 1710. The standard, what's that? 1971. Sorry, my numbers are around. But the standards are set, and these certain tests that the gear manufacturers have to pass for it to be compliant. In the eyes of what's right in America, Wilmington Fire Department has ample turnout gear. New Hanover County Fire Department both have good turnout gear. The problem is that they just contain PFAS, and there's no alternative right now. So there's nothing that can be done currently to address this other than limiting exposure, not wearing your gear on medical calls, trying to keep it off as much as possible to limit the exposure rate. But does that answer your question?
Yeah, because I know we're advocates for you guys.
Yeah,
And
well,
if I
thank you.
knew that you were going out there with a uniform that didn't work, we would put money in the budget. I maybe wouldn't buy a Thermo Fisher or something.
I appreciate it, and
Okay.
it works. It's there for thermal protection, and
Okay.
that's the purpose that it serves.
All right.
And our gear does just that. It does protect us from those thermal properties when we go into fires. It's simply that there's no current safe alternatives, and we're stuck with what we have. So we're going to continue using it because, in the end, that's what we do. We're firefighters. We go into burning buildings. We search for victims. We put fires out. That's the job, right? And that's going to continue to happen. What we're trying to get across is we're advocating for a change in the standard so we can get those safe alternatives in, and then the manufacturers can make that safe gear.
All right, thank you.
I just want to add to that really quick. Along with that, we also run CarX, medical calls, all sorts of things. And to limit our time in our turnout gear, we are asking our municipalities to look into alternative things that we could wear, like extrication gear or jumpsuits to throw on if we're in our workout clothes, or if it's at night, that we can just throw on real quick and run to a call that is non-structural firefighter related. So we are trying to explore those avenues, but again, that's money. and we need our departments and the county and the city to help fund those things and get the alternative type gear for non-firefighting things. So, calls.
Dr. Mead, can you elaborate on any sort of research that might be able to be done, you know, through your work with the NC Collaboratory, potentially?
So my focus with that is on, right now anyway, the atmospheric occurrence and fate of PFAS. There is a team, though, within there, actually a couple of teams, that are looking at exposure of firefighters within the firehouse, as well as quantifying the gas phase PFAS within the firehouse. That's not something that my lab is involved with, but there's others that are within the network itself.
Thank you. Other questions?
Yeah, kind of two-parted question. I'm thinking particularly for a lot of us, we like being outside, we like being out with outdoor recreational equipment, and we've already started to hear about how things like Gore-Tex has PFAS in it. And I'm curious, in this process of learning and doing this research for firefighter equipment, what lessons can we take from that as we start to think about things kind of in the public sphere that contain PFAS, and what lessons can we take from there? And second question, also thinking recreational gear, is like for us backpackers out there, that we have water filters that we use to filter our waters in the creeks here in North Carolina. Are there things that we can start to do, or research that's being done for those kinds of filters that don't go through a city filter system?
I'll start. So the outdoor gear question, this is actually a surprising win that happened this year. Patagonia and REI have pledged to get all of PFAS out of their products that they sell in their stores by, I think, 2025. Is that right? I think so. Yeah. So that was due to customers demanding it. So I am a policy wonk, and I think that legislation will solve everything, and that is wrong a lot of the time. So that was market-driven. That was customers saying what they will and what they won't pay for. So that is one answer to the outdoor gear question. I don't know specifics like Life Straw or any brands that would treat for PFAS. So I don't have any recommendations for that. But it was news to me that the federal standard, like even though there may be alternatives that could be effective that you could push for and try to, demand it, that the federal standards wouldn't allow that. So.
That's correct.
Yeah, I believe the NFPA is made up of a bunch of different people, and some of them are on these textile manufacturing companies. So they have special interests, so.
Yeah, and, as far as the answer to your question, the other materials for backpacking and whatnot, I mean, everything out there, I think you guys talked about earlier that, everything has some level of PFAS in it that's, that you buy, like your rain gear or whatnot. The only thing I could tell you is this, for us, the garments we're wearing is going to be superheated. So, if you were watching the movie and you saw the General President, Ed Kelly, speak, we go into a burning building, and you may have temperatures anywhere from, a couple hundred degrees at the floor on up, 500 degrees on the floor. Your gear starts to off-gas. So all that starts all the PFAS starts off-gassing, and it gets absorbed into our bodies. So that's, it's a big difference between turnout gear and other materials with PFAS. I'm not even sure on the absorption rate with like rain gear. You guys may have some insight on that, but with turnout gear, the absorption rate is increased because of that off-gassing under extremely high temperatures.
Other questions from the audience? Yes.
Yes. Well, first off, Leigh and Ben, thank you very much for what you do. The question I have is Leigh, you just mentioned it a little bit. Who really writes these standards? And the conflict of interest part to me is very interesting in this. And in the end, it would seem to me that the people wearing the gear are the ones who should have the major say in this. You know what the risks are, and you know what you need to be protected against. And I guess the question in the end is, what is essential, right? And I advocate as much as I can for phasing out of non-essential uses of PFAS. And so I'm curious to maybe hear what your thoughts are on, is any part of the PFAS in turnout gear essential in your view? And the other question is, who really can have the ultimate say in the standard writing to phase out the parts that are not essential?
So from my understanding is that it's not essential to have the PFAS in our turnout gear. And the reason is, like we said before, because of the NFPA standards. And then a few months back, we all went up to Durham because the NFPA was meeting to review this 1971 standard for our turnout gear. And you saw our president, Ed Kelly, was there as well. And other members of the IAFF were up there as well, speaking on behalf of this, and it went around and around, and now the IAFF is suing NFPA because I guess they're just not willing to change the standard. And if you have more information.
Yeah, so, the chemicals that they're using in the turnout gear are the durable water repellents. It is important for us to not be saturated with water in our turnout gear. If you imagine what water does inside a hot fire, we try not to get steam burned. And so we have the PFAS that's laden with the outer shell to basically repel water off of us. But we also have a moisture barrier we have a 3-layer system, and we have a moisture barrier that's in between the internal padding and the outer layer that basically is if it does penetrate that outer shell, then it stops there. And again, that's very high levels of PFAS. With the lawsuit, it's going to take a long time. This is not an immediate fix, and I feel like the firefighter should have a say on what our gear does and how it affects us, but unfortunately, we're kind of stuck right now. There's some things that are going on. Leigh mentioned it earlier that I know New Hanover County Fire Rescue, we're looking at alternative gear right now, that we don't have to wear structural turnout gear on certain calls. So we go to Rex, we can put a different set of gear on that doesn't have PFAS in it. And it does have a thermal protection property, but it's very minimal. It's more of a flash protection. So we are right now, actually I have a demo set. They gave me one to try out. But we are looking at outfitting every firefighter in New Hanover County with this second set of gear that limits their exposure. So if you wake up at 2, 3, 4 in the morning for a medical call, and you're in your gym shorts, you can throw this other set of gear on, not your structural. If you go to a wreck, if you go to any service call, that you may need something over what you're wearing, it gives us another option. So I will say hats off to New Hanover County Fire Rescue, who we work for. They are looking at alternatives, and this is all because of conversations that we started with our administration. So they're doing a good job for us right now, and we hopefully will have that alternative in place very soon.
Other questions? Maybe we'll take 2 more.
I have kind of a general question, mostly for the PFAS researchers. I work on a funding model, and that means that the research that I do is funded by people who have money. But the federal government in recent years has been more focused on environmental justice, which is very important. Firefighters are an EJ community. They are exposed to PFAS at levels that normal people are not. So I'm just curious, we've been looking for insight from a lot of different groups, but how you all address the issue of environmental justice when your work is funded by people who have money. How do you find those diverse kind of funding sources?
Right. So usually the citizens that need the most help, unfortunately, fall within that area and are the most impacted. And so we take great pains to incorporate them within the experimental design, work with the folks, and try and disseminate our findings as much as we can with them.
My role is not really in the research sector, but more communicating that research to the impacted communities, and you're right, that's hard. So what we have done is lean on and pay people to be the consultants to go into these communities. I don't speak Spanish. I am a white woman. There's a lot of barriers to have people trust me if I knock on their door and be like, hey, your water's contaminated. So we have been able to partner with a lot of these grants that we can afford to pay consultants and community advocates to help us and be the liaison. But we've also used a lot of kind of alternative methods to get the word out there. Last year we did robocalls. We had one of the leaders in our community in Pittsburgh. He's a pastor at an AME church, and he recorded his voice saying the message and was a robocall to every phone number in Pittsburgh. So, we look at social media, we look at Instagram, and that's a way that all of you guys maybe know about PFAS, but not everybody uses that. And so those are often also the communities that don't know that they have access to Comores well resources or RO systems or anything like that. So that has been a learning process for sure.
Okay, one more question, yes. I'll ask the question first and then give the background. The question is, do you think one interim step to providing people some empowerment to fight back is a take on the labeling laws? When we have food allergens, now there's a law that it has to be in a bold label so you can make a choice of whether you're going to use it and how you're going to use it and whether it's going to make you sick. If we could require PFAS labeling on consumer products and professional products, wouldn't that make a huge difference in terms of empowering the public, putting pressure on manufacturers to say, this isn't good business anymore because nobody's going to buy it, but forcing that knowledge. I'm an attorney and I do litigation in the PFAS area, and one really good piece of news, because in the PFAS world there's not a lot of good news, and so I want to share a little good news, is that in the AFFF foam litigation that's going on in South Carolina right now, last week DuPont had filed a motion to dismiss the claims against it, saying that they didn't have a duty to warn. And the court said, BS, you're in this, and we're going to talk about that in the trial that's about to start. So I think there's a movement to say there's a duty to warn. And from your perspectives, would that be something that could move action on a lot of fronts?
Yeah, I think the more people that we can get, especially, for example, like the NFPA, to get them to change the standard, the more of us that's putting pressure on them, that lawsuit putting pressure on them, the labels are a great idea as well. I mean, we just need to get it out there, whether it's through the news media, through our local government representatives. We just need as much support and pressure on these textile companies, the NFPA, to change the way that they're designing our turnout gear.
I'll just follow up. I do agree with that. I do believe they have a duty to warn. You look at the tobacco companies, the same thing happened there. You know, every tobacco product now has a warning on it. And so I think it's past time that these companies like DuPont, Chemours, that they own up to what they're doing. There's data, like they said, that's going back years and decades showing that, you know, that they're producing carcinogens. And they're making billions off of this, you know, and at the expense of just normal people out here on the street. And like Laura Leigh, I'm a dad, you know, I'm a husband, you know, that's what I am more than a firefighter. You know, I'm gonna do this job for 30 years, but at the end of the day, I want to be able to be there for my kids and not have to suffer. I mean, between Wilmington and New Hanover County, you know, we have several of our firefighters that are fighting cancer. And it's a shame, you know, and you're seeing cancer at rates that are way too soon. You have, you know, 25-year-old males with testicular cancer. I mean, that's unheard of. And so, you know, yes, they have a duty to warn, and I think that maybe that all could be addressed in that lawsuit.
I was also thinking similarly to the tobacco industry, like let's not just label it, let's put a Surgeon General warning that it causes cancer. I think that would be a huge step.
And just to add one thought, oftentimes secondary manufacturers will purchase materials, and they might or might not know that PFAS is in that material. So just to make, yeah, sure. Yeah, that's something that would have to be addressed as well.
And so that was a very good point about the secondary manufacturers. You know, we've been told that and I've actually been to the Tenkata plant outside of Atlanta, Georgia, where they make the raw materials for turnout gear. And obviously, at no point did we talk about PFAS, and we did talk about water repellency, you know, but just a general conversation. And we have been told that if you go into any of the major manufacturers for turnout gear, that the staff are all in hazmat suits, essentially. They're all wearing protective gear because it is harmful for their employees. And it's packaged in a, you know, sealed bag when it goes through the mail, and when it comes to us, we open it up and put it on and get to work. So it's, yeah, that secondary manufacturer, in our case, I believe they are aware, and that's why they're putting their workers in protective gear when they work on it.
I would love to thank our panelists for a really great discussion. I know it's been a long day, and everybody has been as I've been walking around, people have been telling me, the speakers and the panelists, like, wow, what a great group of people you have in this region. Like, this audience is amazing. And I'm like, I agree wholeheartedly. Thank you so much, and you've stuck around. I do have one thing I forgot to do, and I'm going to do it now, and please bear with me. This is a clip that Elijah Yetter Bowman, the founder and the filmmaker of Ethereal Films, whose pronouns I also got wrong earlier, and I apologize. They produced this film you've watched, and they have been working on a film on Gen X, thanks, for our region for several years, and they were unable to come, and they worked instead, because they felt so bad, they worked on this clip for us, and they said they worked hours and hours last night, so I just can't, I gotta make you sit through it. It is amazing, so you're gonna love it. And I'm playing it, I think, on this other screen, yep.
This is Wilmington. It's beautiful, unique, our artistic, a bit crazy, and it's also where I grew up. But while I was growing up, my mom became very sick with an autoimmune disease, so I wanted to become a doctor who could cure people like her. But while I was in school, I learned that Wilmington's water had been poisoned. So I started to investigate, and the company, DuPont, that was responsible, had rebranded to hide their liability.
Good neighbors care. At Chemours, we care.
We committed ourselves to being a new kind of chemistry company, dedicated to being a leading steward of the environment.
Are we still releasing chemicals into the air and water?
I am a commercial plumber. I have worked in nuclear plants. If we have something to break loose, I guarantee you in an hour or less it's shut down. Please explain to me why you released for 13 continuous hours with DEQ and EPA standing right there.
We have captured and are capturing right now. We are capturing all of our processed wastewater. It's being put in tanker trucks. It's being shipped to Texas for responsible disposal.
Why are you spending millions of dollars to clean it up if you're claiming it's safe?
What chemistry was teaching me is that these chemicals were extremely dangerous.
It's not opioids, it's not tobacco, it's not alcohol, it's not car accidents that are killing us. It is chronic diseases, and the major player in these diseases are environmental pollutants.
I realized that my town wasn't unique.
A real-life hero in this movie, a story of a chemical company that's polluting a piece of land, that's killing people, killing livestock.
Got that cow showing you had that tumor on her bag as big as your fist.
This is part of a systemic issue.
They've dumped all kinds of shit in here.
And we only knew about that because of a farmer and a lawyer.
The lawyer who became DuPont's worst nightmare.
Our children are being born pre-polluted. We all have these man-made toxic chemicals in our blood.
I'm telling you all this because you are part of the story.
And the bad guys always say there's no value in the story because they know how powerful the story is.
He did not answer the question. I have been trying to sell my house. I am below DEQ levels, but since my neighbors are highly contaminated, I cannot sell my home. Are y'all gonna buy my house? Are y'all gonna help me sell my home? What am I supposed to do? I am an ordained minister. Y'all are crooked. I have defiled the house of God.
My toilet's still contaminated. The hot and cold's contaminated here. The hot and cold's contaminated in that shower. What is that doing for me?
Once a community is dumped on, it's almost as if people write them off.
Chemours spun out of DuPont. I don't know at all what the DuPont mission was.
Are you planning at any point at compensating people who have been harmed by your company's chemicals? So your answer is also no.
Correct.
So why am I going to allow somebody who on more than one occasion has been caught releasing toxins into the water?
I want to show you the global community is fighting back.
Okay, if I'm speaking to a community who's been disproportionately exposed to compounds, what can I give them?
We need to extinguish cancer and the threat of PFAS for everyone.
Put the responsibility on them to show us that it's not going to give our kids cancer or cause, an autoimmune diseases, which are exploding right now.
Water is life! Water is life! No more Chemours!
It's becoming clear that we can win this.
Because the longer this thing goes, the more information I'm collecting. And after a while, you'll understand what I'm talking about.
We can still fix this.
This is your invitation.